A demonic creature, commonly known as Spring-Heeled Jack, with seemingly inhuman characteristics and abilities, terrorised the townsfolk of England for many years. What did Spring-Heeled Jack do to deserve such infamy? Who or what was the terrifying creature that struck fear into the hearts of men and women alike? In this video, we're going to investigate those questions. London, England has been the site of many terrible events throughout history, both real and rumoured. One of the most famous is the rampage of Jack the Ripper, who terrorised the city during the late 1800s. But before those horrible events took place, there was another deeply mysterious entity who was rumoured to stalk London, and eventually as far north as Scotland earlier that century. This creature was associated by some with the boogeyman, with parents telling their unruly children that the brute would leap up to peer into their bedroom windows at night. That demonic monster was known as Spring-Heeled Jack. The first alleged sightings of the horrible creature were made in London in 1837, when a young servant woman by the name of Mary Stevens had left her parents' home in Battersea. She began on her journey to work at a location in Lavender Hill, a walk which would have taken her no longer than 30 minutes. As she passed through Clapham Common, a local area of woodland that has since been turned into a popular park, she was suddenly beset upon by a strange figure who leapt at her from a dark alley. Allegedly, the figure immobilised her arms and began ripping at her clothes with its claws, which were described by her as cold and clammy as those of a corpse. Mary screamed in terror, which led to the assailant fleeing the scene of the attack. The loud screaming and commotion attracted several local residents to investigate, but although a search of the area was performed, they could not find anyone at all. Just the very next day, a mysterious individual jumped in the way of a passing carriage, which caused the coachman to lose control and crash. He was seriously injured from the accident. However, the intriguing aspect of this report was that according to several witnesses, the figure escaped by jumping over a wall which was nearly 3 meters high, while cackling with a high-pitched, ringing laughter. Over the next few months, the news of these events began to spread, with the townspeople talking about the fiendish individual who had the ability to leap almost superhuman heights. Soon, the press and the public started to use the moniker of Spring-Heeled Jack. Mike Dash, a Welsh historian who performed exhaustive research into the peculiar events, described that these bizarre attacks were reported as coming from a ghost, imp or devil in the shape of a large white bull. After those initial 2 attacks, the activity began to spread. Mainly attacking women, the monster would ring a doorbell, and when someone would answer, it would ravage their clothes with its claws. Other sightings have him simply ambushing people who were out walking. It seemed that no one was safe from the terrifying attacks. Similar reports continued to trickle in throughout the rest of the year, with strange crimes being attributed to assailants in the guise of a ghost, a bear, or a devil. These disparate reports would eventually lead to the theory that this mysterious monster might have been a group of well-to-do men dressing up and scaring people on a bet. Others reported the figure as wearing red shoes or armour. The strange rumours of these attacks became so widespread that the Mayor of London at the time, Sir John Cowan, revealed an anonymous complaint letter he had received with his peers at Mansion House. It read, "It appears that some individuals have laid a wager with a mischievous and foolhardy companion that he durst not take it upon himself the task of visiting many of the villages near London in 3 different disguises, a ghost, a bear, and a devil. The wager has, however, been accepted, and the unmanly villain has succeeded in depriving 7 ladies of their senses, 2 of whom are not likely to recover, but to become burdens to their families." The police were instructed to search for the individual responsible, and rewards were offered. A peculiar report from the Brighton Gazette related how a gardener in Rose Hill, Sussex, had been terrified by a creature of unknown nature. The incident occurred on the 13th of April, when it appeared to a gardener in the shape of a bear or some other 4-footed animal. Having attracted the gardener's attention by a growl, it then climbed the garden wall and ran along it on all 4s, before jumping down and chasing the gardener for some time. After terrifying the gardener, the apparition scaled the wall and made its exit. The best known incidents involving Spring-Heeled Jack took place within 10 days of each other in February of that year, again involving 2 young women in the area. On the night of the 19th of February, Jane Alsop answered the door of her father's house to a man claiming to be a police officer who told her to bring a light, claiming, "We've caught Spring-Heeled Jack here in the lane." She brought the person a candle and noticed that he wore a large cloak. The moment she handed him the candle, however, he threw off the cloak and reportedly presented a most hideous and frightful appearance, vomiting blue and white flame from his mouth while his eyes resembled red balls of fire. Without saying a word, he caught hold of her and began tearing her gown with his claws, which she was certain were of some metallic substance. She screamed for help and managed to get away from him and ran towards the house. He caught her on the steps and tore her neck and arms with his claws. She was rescued by one of her sisters, after which her assailant fled. Just 9 days later, 18-year-old Lucy Scales and her sister were returning home after visiting their brother, a butcher who lived in a respectable part of London. Miss Scales stated in her report to the police that as she and her sister were passing along Green Dragon Alley, they observed a person standing in an angle of the passage. She was walking in front of her sister at the time, and just as she came up to the person, who was wearing a large cloak, he spurted a quantity of blue flame in her face, which deprived her of her sight, and so alarmed her that she instantly dropped to the ground and was seized with violent fits, which continued for several hours. Her sister described Lucy's assailant as being tall, thin, and gentlemanly, covered in a large cloak and carrying a small lamp or bullseye lantern, similar to those used by the police. After these incidents, Spring-Heeled Jack began to be an incredibly well-known and infamous figure of the time. His alleged exploits were reported in the newspapers and became the subject of several plays performed in the cheap theatres that were numerous at the time. The devil was even renamed Spring-Heeled Jack in some Punch and Judy shows, a traditional puppet show popular at the British seasides. But even as his fame was growing, reports of Spring-Heeled Jack's appearances became less frequent, although more widespread. In 1843, however, a wave of sightings swept the country once again. A report from Northamptonshire described him as the very image of the devil himself, with horns and eyes of flame. The legend was also linked with the phenomenon of the devil's footprint, which appeared in Devon in February 1855. Sightings continued to be reported in various areas of Britain throughout the latter portion of the 19th century, including Aldershot and Lincolnshire. In both of the mentioned area sightings, residents fired at the figure with no effect, and it then disappeared into the surrounding darkness with astonishing leaps which were said to be superhuman. Reports spread to the northern part of England towards the end of the century, with the last widely reported sighting of Spring-Heeled Jack being made in Liverpool in 1904. No further reports are known after that point. What happened to the inhuman creature is the subject of rumour and speculation. No one was ever caught and identified as Spring-Heeled Jack. Combined with the extraordinary abilities attributed to him and the very long period during which he was reportedly at large, this has led to numerous and varied theories of his nature and identity. While several researchers seek a normal explanation for the events, other authors explore the more fantastic details of the story to propose different kinds of paranormal speculation. The more logical explanations for the strange attacks range from being the product of mass hysteria to a combined effort from various individuals being the subject of imitators later on, which would explain the extended period of sightings. A popular rumour circulating as early as 1840 pointed to an Irish nobleman, the Marquis of Waterford, as the main suspect. It was rumoured that he had previously had bad experiences with women and police officers. Others, though, have claimed a more supernatural origin, due to the widespread reports of red eyes, flamed breath, and superhuman agility. Some have theorised that Spring-Heeled Jack was an extraterrestrial entity with a non-human appearance and features, or alternatively that he was a demon, accidentally or purposefully summoned into this world by practitioners of the occult, or who made himself manifest simply to create spiritual turmoil. Curiously, a similar figure known as Perak, the Spring Man of Prague, was reported to have been seen in Czechoslovakia around 1939 to 1945. Identical to the reports around Spring-Heeled Jack, Perak was said to leap out from shadowy alleys and startle passers-by. Oral tradition suggests that some of Perak's leaps were of an extraordinary magnitude, including the act of jumping over train carriages. There have been no further reports pertaining to Spring-Heeled Jack nor the Springman of Prague since. Even if official sightings of Spring-Heeled Jack have stopped, his legend still survives. Characters inspired by Spring-Heeled Jack can be found from steampunk novels to mainstream comic books, including a graphic novel by Philip Pullman, who's best known for the His Dark Materials series. It's unclear how many of the numerous reports were true, or if they were exaggerated, or even completely fictional. However, it's truly peculiar that such sightings were so widespread and similar in nature. The similarity to the case of the Devil's Footprints is also fascinating, and raises the question as to whether there really was an evil creature stalking England in the 19th century, preying on the unfortunate. Regardless of the truth, all we can hope is that the legend of Spring-Heeled Jack remains as such, and that we do not experience such demonic horror again.